Hello, sovereign nodes. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to open up a path of creativity and connection for each of you. As you know, decentralized consciousness is a community of people who are committed to connecting to and embodying the unconditional love of their truest selves. This is a platform to not only support one another directly, but it is a space for each one of us to seed our own creativity. Whatever feels like coming through articles, artwork, music, maybe even some Bitcoin related software, whatever you feel in your heart like creating and sharing, this is your place to do it. I also wanted to take this moment to remind everyone of the session facilitators in the decentralized consciousness community. There are currently 7 people offering these incredible healing spaces, and I have personally done multiple sessions with each one of them. I can honestly say that each one helped exponentially in a unique, powerful way that met me exactly when and where I needed it. If you at all feel resonance with this idea, I encourage you to check out bitcoin-consciousness.com/sessions and reach out to one of us. With that, thanks for listening, and let's get into this episode.
Well, I absolutely love that, Caleb. I love that we can just flow and embody our higher self. So, welcome to this amazing adventure of exploration of our consciousness. My name is Monika Burra. I'm a transformational psychotherapist and a co creator of Soul Learning as well as Masters of Creation, 2 training programs that help you let go of your limiting beliefs, old stories, and bring you into the highest empowerment to be the change you want to see in the world and to step into your highest potential. So, just to introduce our panelists, we of course have you from Decentralized Consciousness and DJ Valerie from Bitcoin for Peace, Yoni Appleberg, an author of Abundance Through Scarcity, a psychonaut and a doctor. We have Roger 9000, a master of cacao ceremonies and a musician. Tom Tabor, plant medicine facilitator and a co-founder of a retreat center in Colorado. Holly Berkeley from the bitcoinadvisor.com and the blissmart.com. And let's just allow ourselves to flow. Welcome.
Let me start real quick with just a quick introduction. So Monica and I met a couple of weeks ago, and we did our first recording of a decentralized consciousness podcast episode. And from there, we both felt so inspired and excited to continue reaching out and having these conversations with various members of the community. And so she has been awesome at reaching out to all of you whom I've never met. So I'm excited to meet all of you here today. And we're just going to see where this conversation flows, whatever we feel like talking about and whatever curiosities we feel like exploring. Let's do it.
So who would like to start? How about you, Roger?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so my name's Roger. I'm a musician. I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm very into the philosophy behind Bitcoin, and that kind of leads to, as you were talking about, Caleb, the authentic self and the discovery of the self, the purification of the self. Izzy likes to say, know thyself. I think it's just it's a balancing act. I think Bitcoin is rebalancing what it is to be human again, and it's giving us back this concept of the metaphysical. And it's I think it's something we've been looking for a long. It's definitely something I've been looking for a long time. And I think as Bitcoiners, we can all relate to somehow being on this journey for a long time and finally kind of finding Bitcoin. But we can dive into a bit further as we go. So yeah, I'm really into the metaphysics of Bitcoin. I think it's a very attractive thing. I think that's why we're all here. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Yoni?
Sure. Tossing the ball over to me. So my name is Yoni Appleberg. I'm based in Sweden. I mine fiat as a medical doctor, and I am an author. And I have a deep interest for neurology, cognition, metacognition, consciousness, and emotional intelligence. But also, and for that reason, I am also deeply interested in psychedelics. And my recent work on Bitcoin has been drawing connections between psychedelics and Bitcoin. And I've had quite a few talks on this and a few presentations on this topic. And my intention is to continue go down this route and further explore how the psychedelic properties of Bitcoin, which is in a sense, as Roger alluded to, a metaphysical layer of Bitcoin. Yeah, so I think that is where we all find common ground. All right, I'll toss the ball. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll
Sure.
toss the ball to Valerie. Yeah.
Go Val.
Okay. Hey, aloha. Thanks, you guys, for organizing this. It's so fun. I wasn't sure exactly we were recording, so I'm in my pajamas, so it's okay. DJs and PJs.
Nobody would know.
Anyways, my name is DJ Valerie B. Love. I'm the founder and host of the Bitcoin for Peace podcast and project. And I've been on a journey for almost 35 years. Ram Dass was my first spiritual teacher, and Be Here Now fell off the library bookshelf when I was in college. And I'm like, oh, a purple book, yay. Right. And it completely transformed my whole trajectory of life. And I believe Bitcoin is something like, I've been on a spiritual path for a long time, in and out, up and down, the whole thing. And I always thought like, oh, if we just all meditate enough, and if everybody just, dropped some acid and tuned in and tuned out and dropped out and all that good stuff, that everything would be kumbaya on planet Earth. And I was pretty naive and didn't really understand about the money layer, and how if we're trying to build this beautiful, peaceful, co-thriving, harmonious world on top of a layer of cancerous, dead soil, aka the fiat system, we can never, ever grow the planet and the humanity that we're seeking. And it was such a mind-opening experience when Bitcoin came into my life a little over 3 years ago, and realizing like, wow, money is the one thing other than air that truly connects every single human being on planet Earth. And if we don't have a peaceful money, if we don't have a sound money, we can't build this world that we all, I think every human in their hearts wants to have. And it was such an interesting aha, and I've been putting together this whole personal growth program, this 11X project, and it was missing one of the 11 areas is money. And I'm just like, okay, I got to go dive in. And so I started diving into Bitcoin and crypto, and then I learned the difference, and I started learning that like, whoa, we can have this tool to escape authoritarian regimes. We can have this tool for cross-border permissionless transactions, so everybody gets a seat at the table. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta learn about this thing. And I've been in this rabbit hole ever since. And so it's been magnificent meeting 4 of you and Caleb. I've also worked with Sama, and he was on my podcast, and I recorded an episode with him, but I don't think he launched it. But it's so important that all of us understand that even if we have consciousness and meditation and psychedelics, and even if we have Bitcoin over here, if we don't marry these two, if we don't help people understand that they all go hand in hand, we're going to be building, a 3-legged table for planet Earth. And so I am really grateful to be on this mission with each of you as creators, as healers, as activists, as medicine folks, as media folks. It's such an honor. And so thanks for inviting me, and thanks for the work you guys do.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly. Hi, all. I'm Holly. And my goodness, I've been in this realm for probably 35 years. I have a private practice helping to accelerate personal growth for entrepreneur and business leaders using energy medicine, energy psychology, bunch of certifications over that time. I have that private practice, but we also do retreats quarterly, where we are only making use of entheogens to accelerate that process, to get people kind of out of their heads and into their hearts and bodies, so they can get out of the left brain. Been involved in meditation, teaching meditation since 1990. And the thing I'm really interested in right now, and where we're going, is moving from this 3 and 4th dimensional awareness and reality into multidimensional consciousness, where, the globe was in the midst of a massive shift that's been coming, and now it is here, of consciousness and awareness. And I knew this was all happening. I've been tracking this for years, but kind of similar to Val, I didn't realize there was missing that layer underneath. And one of the things I've realized as I've gone down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin over the last few years is, to me, Bitcoin is conscious money. And, we have consciousness, we have money, but Bitcoin is conscious money. And this is what it's going to be the underlying layer that supports us in moving into greater global and cosmic consciousness. And one of the things I really want to do is, and I think it's important to do, is to bring increased awareness into our inner awareness of consciousness. There are a lot of Bitcoins out there that are doing, so many things, much more increased awareness around nutrition, around fitness, around, and it comes from Bitcoin of having that increased awareness around what is money, what does that mean in your life? And it changes all these other things. But there's kind of a piece that's missing, and that's the inner awareness piece, the consciousness piece. And that's the piece that I want to bring in to all of this. So that's where I am. And I'm based in the United States. I'm in Utah right now. So
wonderful.
Yeah, awesome.
Beautiful. Caleb, would you like to say some few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Caleb, and I have not been on the spiritual path for very long, actually, relative to some of you. My background actually is in engineering and carpentry, so I have a very, very rational and practical mindset. So right now, I guess the spiritual aspects of my life really involve understanding, and I really love forming different models and understandings of this crazy world that we live in and the spiritual side of it. I've always been, ever since I was a kid, I've always been very interested in, ancient civilizations and the incredible, amazing things that they were capable of doing, but never really connected it. And also like with extraterrestrials and just all of these things that were so hard for us to understand. And we have this feeling that there's something more than what we can determine from the rocks and that are left, the ruins that are left in the sand, or the crazy videos that you get of the blurry things in the sky. I've always been interested in that kind of stuff. And now what's crazy is that it's all kind of coming full circle in the spiritual journey. And I'm finding more and more that there's like this huge spiritual aspect to all of these things that it's right under our nose, and we're just not even we're just now noticing it. I think you had, Holly, mentioned this massive shift in humanity that's happening right now, and being someone that comes from this very logical and rational background, it's cool because Bitcoin is has been a great segue to move from this don't trust, verify, rationality, mathematics into something that is really quite the opposite. So with spirituality being, an individual, almost fleeting, ever dynamic truth that everybody kind of has their own. So what's absolutely blows my mind is that we have this mix between very black and white mathematical rule set, and then you have spirituality, which is really nothing like it, but they somehow are meshing for so many people. It's quite amazing. And so for me, really this whole journey started with the birth of my son, and becoming a parent and feeling the unconditional love that rushed in for me, and getting to hold him for the first time, and that being mixed with the the rapid understanding of, gosh, this is what I want to do. I just want to be with my family. I want to be with the people I care about. And for that, I understand that my time is the most valuable resource that I have, and how can I use it more effectively? And um, obviously I want my money to respect that as well. But that's only just part of it. So how I have the money that respects it, ideally. But also I want to be able to respect it as well. I want to be able to do what I actually want to do, instead of chasing these things that are empty, at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is, it's not, you get there and it's never what you thought it would be. And that's where, following our highest self and our highest passion is such a critical piece. So
Caleb, may I add to that?
yeah, for sure.
There's this common misconception about spirituality, that there's this dichotomy, this rift between science and spirituality, the logical and the practical and scientific mindset, and the spiritual one. But there's not. There is nothing unscientific about spirituality. There's nothing illogical about it. There's nothing impractical about it. And I know it's a space that is saturated with woo-woo, and I counteract that as much as I can. Spirituality is simply a different way of acquiring knowledge, and one that has been sorely lacking in mainstream academia. But it has been present before, and I think it's going to be present again. For example, it's fairly well known that the great physicists of the 20th century, they read the Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that dismissing the very idea that there are different ways of acquiring knowledge that don't all have to be external, I think that's very important, and you should not maintain this idea that there is this rift between spirituality and science.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And we get into concepts of quantum physics as well, and the double slit experiment, which I spoke about in the podcast that's going to be coming out this coming week. But you're totally right, and I think that for me, my biggest struggle as a person who is coming from a very rational, very physical identity, someone who is very, very committed to building things and using mathematics. It's hard for me to make a shift from that old identity and the people that know that old identity to one that is acquiring knowledge in this different way, because I've identified with this old identity for so long that to be able to make that shift, other people have a really hard time understanding that. And I've actually what I've come to find, and you basically hinted at it, is that these are all my own inner reflections, right? So when I feel that other people will judge me or question me, or there will be some kind of misalignment between this new way of thinking and my old identity. These are all, I guess, old patterns within myself, and it's up to me to move into a more upgraded version of my own models, to be able to either I was going to say convince, but convince really isn't the right word, as much as it just is to embody this new way of thinking and being.
I'm nodding in agreement. So
Can I add?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Okay.
Can I add something? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Caleb, I can speak to this a bit in that my background is in finance and tech. So I used to be a trader on Wall Street, grew up left brain engineer, military engineer father. Hello. And went into all of the sciences, graduated in chemistry, went into trading, moved into technology, spent a lot of time in that world. And, had an event and I had these little glimpses kind of as I was younger of these little experiences that would drop in, but I just kind of discounted them because in our society, the rational sciences are what are accepted and rewarded. And, the energy-based sciences have not been. We're moving towards that. I mean, we are electromagnetic beings in an electromagnetic, universe. And everything is energy, frequency, vibration, quantum physics. And when we look at quantum physics, that is all about energy. And it pulls in that sense of, that sense of spirituality. So I can really relate to, having to shift all my models over from what was accepted and rewarded in our society, in our world. And it's taken a while for me to get really comfortable about, no, this is science too, but we just haven't talked about it in that way. And we're getting there. We're talking about that. We haven't had the tools to measure it, things like that. The tools with fine enough frequency, whatever the word is I'm looking for there, to be able to, measure these things that are happening to people. But I had a couple of experiences happen to me that kind of blew my barn doors wide open in terms of, what was real and what wasn't real. All of the things that I had thought were real, that I took as kind of in that real box. It's like, oh, no, there's way more than that. And it was extremely helpful. I mean, it rocked my world because it was a basic rug pull in my reality. Everything that I knew to be true kind of vaporized in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of reorient myself to a very different way of being and thinking.
What happened?
What happened?
What was the experience? Tell us.
I won't go into the personal details of it. But someone said something to me, and it was just so counter to what I knew to be true, that it made me question everything. If that's not true, then what is true? And I found myself kind of out of my body, floating in this, in this massive space. And I'm like, oh, this is reality, not what I thought was reality in the 3D human form standing on the earth. And, Val and Monika, to some of the things we've talked about, I realized that the only thing, the frequency of the universe was not what I thought it was. The frequency of the universe was love. And I don't mean human love, romantic love. I mean universal consciousness love. I was floating in that. And when I came back kind of from that, I'm like, okay, I had a very different perspective on everything I was, interrelating with, on this 3D human level. So that opened up a lot of doors, and I started going down the rabbit hole of what is energy and, all this kind of fun stuff. So coming back around to, this is science. We just haven't focused on it in our 3D human form. Tayone's comment, this quantum physics, is this science?
Well, I think also to all of your points about identity, right? Like our ego wants to hold up the identity of ourselves, of what the universe, our perceptions of the universe are, what our perceptions of the world are. And by design, the powers that be want us to be in certain identities so that we can be controllable, and they want us to have these identities so that we have divisions among ourselves because of hair or skin or dirt or what we think we believe in. And so to me, information, and not having access to spiritual information, to truth, and being told that we're not supposed to go connect with God, universe, spirit, because there's a centralized authority that is supposed to do that for you, that's analogous to the money system. And so when we start to understand that obviously spirituality is information, like you said, Ione, and money is simply information. And when we start understanding the way that the systems have been designed so that we can be good little slaves And that is very disheartening, especially for a lot of us who've gone through life believing a certain authority, whether it's a government or a church or a familial unit. And then we start to get the cracks of truth and light that come through. And then we have to question those figures, those institutions, those systems. It's very, very destabilizing. And so when we go through that ego death, when we go through that transformational process of seeing the light, and then you can't look back after you've seen it. Once you've seen it, you're like, oh no, it can be very, like I said, destabilizing mentally. And I think for us as Bitcoiners, when we start to marry the spiritual and the rest of the system truth that we keep understanding, like, whoa, that's been a lie. That's been a lie. That's been a lie. It's painful, but it's also liberating, right? And so it's like, oh my goodness, yay. I don't have to be shackled to this old version of the system or this old version of myself. I wrote an article called The Bitcoiner's Dilemma, and it talks about going through, the cathartic process like a butterfly. You have to get in that goo. And I think a lot of times, if we don't have a support system, understanding that it's natural to be in goo if you want to do this transformational journey, spiritually and financially on planet Earth, it could be scary. And so I'm really grateful that you guys are bringing each other together to have these conversations and support. And, I had a horrible month in April, but I reached out to everybody, and people have been reaching out, and just, it's nice to know that we have each other. And there's no one or right or wrong way to change the world and to change our inner worlds, and so feeling the love and support from each other is powerful, and sharing that vulnerability is even more powerful because none of us have it all together, and so I really appreciate the work you guys are all doing out here. And yeah, I don't want to hog the mic. I could talk forever.
No, no, not at all.
It's so wonderful to hear all of this. It's I feel like I'm coming from the other direction. For me, my background is in psychotherapy, and I've been a trauma psychotherapist for the past 20 years. And then I stretched beyond the modalities that I've learned into quantum healing and energy medicine. And my awareness has always been spiritual. So I had very challenging times grounding in the reality of the physical until Bitcoin. That's when it started making sense to me that it makes sense we can create heaven on earth. And it's almost like my identity is now shifting from just like pure consciousness, who happens to be in a physical form right here, right now, into a divine human animal, grounding myself into the roots of the earth and loving this physical experience and having a lot of hope for humanity, for all of us to connect those two worlds. And I feel that the physical and the technical and the logical is very essential to the grounding aspect of a lot of the spiritual communities that I've been involved in. I think this is why a lot of spiritual people have issues with money because they haven't discovered Bitcoin and they don't fully understand it. So we're sort of bridging two aspects, and I think that is going to bring that heaven on earth, that multi-dimensional aspect of ourselves. So just wanted to add that.
I can add something to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, that's absolutely true, Monica. Bitcoin is the unification of opposites, and all the time I've spent with Nozomi Hayase, who I think's been on
Yeah, she was.
Decentralized podcast. Her, I mean, she made me cry actually a couple of times with the way she, Bitcoiners they have their feet on the ground, but they have their heads in the clouds, and this incredible unification of opposites is taking place right here, right now, where we can somehow see this hope on earth through the advancement of Bitcoin. And it's this amazing unification of, you know, the physical with the metaphysical. And it's just sublime. And that's why we feel, I think, as Bitcoiners, we are actually, you know, we're the Jedi. We're somehow we're projecting this goodness all around us. I mean, I sometimes feel like a crusader of without the war aspect to being a crusader.
Peaceful. Yeah.
A peaceful crusader. Exactly. Yeah, sorry, Holly.
No, it's a great, I love what you were just saying. You know, it's Bitcoin inspires us to take, you know, personal responsibility for so many areas of our lives. And now we get to take personal responsibility for our connection to spirit, God, energy, whatever you want to call that. It's, you know, it is bridging, it is bringing it in together. And I'm going to say something here that if may be way off on the woo room, but I believe this is what is happening. We are, you know, we have been these carbon-based life forms, right? And we are essentially light beings. So we are moving from being carbon-based light forms into more crystalline-based light and life forms. So there's a new word that's coming out, and I really love this word. It's homoluminous. So we're becoming, you know, like light-based life forms, but it ties absolutely into what Bitcoin is. And when I talk about Bitcoin as being the base, the kind of underlying support base for us moving into this different, very different sense of ourselves, sense of who we are in the cosmos, not these little carbon-based three-dimensional light forms here on Earth, you know, but really being one with that unity consciousness, you know, that we are all one with, and bringing more awareness to that. So to your point, yes.
I have a question for you guys. I'd love to hear, you know, obviously we're witnessing, and throughout all space and time, there's been conflict and war and aggression and power over energies, right? And so obviously we're seeing, you know, in the United States, we're seeing all these campuses and people are very upset and protesting and, you know, divisiveness, whether it's, you know, what's going on in the Middle East or Ukraine or what's going to start happening over in China and Taiwan. How do you address this through the lens of Bitcoin and through the lens of spirituality and through the lens of unity? Like, how can we unify the people who have had, you know, generations of wrongdoing in them, and then they want to hold on to that wrongdoing? Because a lot of times, I know from past abuse that I've been through, I held on to the other is bad and the other is my enemy and the abuser is my enemy. And it wasn't until I did ibogaine about 5 years ago, and I got to, and I had done therapy, I'd done all this stuff, right? And I've done trauma work and all the great stuff, and nothing could get it out of my system. The fear and the other is bad consciousness, because it was in my cells somehow. And it wasn't until I did an ibogaine journey, and one of the landing places from all the crazy tunnels and all the things that I was doing was a playground. And I was 4 years old, and then there were 4 people. It was, you know, my uncle, my dad, my ex-husband, and then 2 men who had raped me, these 5 men. And they had all had different experiences in my life from an abusive point of view, whether it was physical, sexual, or emotional. And then they were all 4 years old. And so all 6 of us were 4 years old in the playground together. And we were physically, I mean, it felt like we were all just little homies hanging out, going on the swing set, building some stuff. And I was engaging with them and their innocence. And they were engaging with my innocence. And it was pure love, and it was pure sweetness. And it wasn't until I physically, you know, I imagined it felt physically to me because of this medicine, my whole system got reprogrammed and reoriented towards the conversation that I kept having in my head, that they're bad, they're evil, they're the enemy, and I'm the victim kind of thing. And so I'd be curious from all of your perspectives, like, how can we as Jedi, how can we support a transformational pathway for folks who are on the ground anywhere on planet Earth who feel like they have this victim aggressor thing going on. Like, how can we support the healing and the unification of our souls and hearts using Bitcoin and consciousness?
Yeah, I think actually we have somewhat of an example of this also in the Bitcoin community as well, with the samurai developers getting arrested. There is a very large segment, and I went through this phase as well. There's a very large segment of the community of Bitcoiners who still view this as a fight, who still view this as we are fighting this bad system, and that's trying to oppress us. And in this past, really this past year, we've really begun to explore darkness more and more and begin to embrace it. And what we have been finding, and going deep into healings and deep into meditations, is that darkness is just another aspect. Really is the opposite aspect of light. It's not that it is inherently bad, but it is instead just like required for light to exist. So when we look at the other side of separation as something that is just a part of us, that is there to help trigger us into our own upgrades, there to to give us a contrast. If we came into this life with the intention to evolve and to experience what it's like to be so far removed from heaven on earth and oneness, we chose to feel all of this fear, pain, and separation so that we could genuinely forget and contrast what it is to be in oneness. And that's what's amazing about being alive today in the world, is we are living lifetimes where we can be in extreme separation and move into more oneness. So I think that really what we need to do, each of us on our own level, is be approaching our own darkness, but instead with not the fear, not trying to solve it, not trying to judge it, but trying to just be with it. And I think that our energy bodies are the exact same as our physical bodies, in that they are designed to just heal themselves. They're designed to move into perfection. So if we can be with that pain and that separation, very very similarly to what you did in your experience with your medicine, is you went deeper into it, and you found that underneath all of it, there was a lot of stories, a lot of models being portrayed, and at the end of the day, there was that purity at the bottom of all of it. So
yes, I agree that we all have this radical self-responsibility ethos, like burners, like Burning Man folks and Bitcoiners, and a lot of us folks on the spiritual path. And yes, we need to do our own work, 100%. That's step one. Step two is, now that we're feeling more empowered, aligned on a mission, hopeful, how can we individually and collectively support this transformation with the understanding of all of the stuff that's going on from people who've got generational trauma, and that they think they have to hold on to this walls up and to this duality. We've got this duality consciousness because of the tribal nature of how humans have been self-organizing for so long, and so how can we support people who have been wronged, who've had family members decimated, who've had lineages of terror? How can we, as conscious seekers, support them in a way that is respectful and in alignment with, hey guys, like, we don't have to grip onto this old stuff. Like, you're poisoning yourself every moment that you keep holding on to this resentment, this fear, this hatred. And and they talk about forgiveness. It's like when you forgive someone, you're the one that actually gets free, not them, because you're holding on, you're poisoning yourself every time you're thinking of that other as the aggressor. And so whether the other is the WEF, whether the other is an oppositional or a central bank, whether the other is a religion, whether the other is somebody from an imaginary dirt line in the sand that's different than you, how can we support with respect, and action, not just la la la, we're doing philosophy. How can we go boots on the ground, be Jedi?
I love that question so much. But I've been thinking about this question, Valerie, for a very long time. And I had an autoimmune disease that nearly killed me. I had a near-death experience, open heart surgery. I think I shared with many of you. And throughout this work of meeting my own shadow, I've met generational trauma and past life trauma. And ultimately, the last flare that I had was healed after I did, without psychedelics, I just ran the movie and I saw myself as a Native American woman who was with her baby and crying, why are they slaughtering our village? We've been so sacred with each other, with nature, with animals. Why? And the answer that came was, there is no other. And so for me, it was such a mind-altering experience where realizing that I am not a victim. I am not a victim. I am not, I've been, but I've been all these things. I've been many lifetimes. I've been a victim. I've been the perpetrator. I've been the abuser. I've been the rescuer. And I've played the rescuer and the victim role in this lifetime. Hi, Tom. So what helped was to step outside of the three roles, step into the role of an awareness, of someone with an awareness just watching all of this. And then I realized it's not just about being an observer, a compassionate observer, because the word compassion comes in first and foremost when you ask that question, to hold everything in compassion, to witness and validate the experience of the ego, the pain, the suffering, and yet be there with that awareness, that loving, compassionate awareness. Eventually, those parts transform because they don't want to hold on to the trauma. And, once that realization of that fullness comes forth, underneath all the layers of trauma is pure consciousness, pure awareness. And when we're tapping into that, we can also, my most transformational realization was that we are creators. So when we're able to tap into this essence of who we truly are, first and foremost, conscious, pure consciousness, incarnating in a physical form. And we are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions. Once you process the trauma, sometimes people are able to tap into it right away. You can choose the thought and energize it with the emotions and begin to create and architect the reality that you want without attachment. Because when you create from that fullness, you are no longer lacking anything. You're no longer a victim. You're no longer in suffering. You are in pure love, like all of us, here we're mentioning, you are pure love consciousness, right? And creating from that fullness, wouldn't this be nice? Wouldn't this be nice? There's no more division, one versus the other. I think the division comes in when we identify ourselves with our egos and our pain and our stories and our suffering. And we can rewrite these stories more consciously. There's actually an interesting project that Avi and I are fascinated by. It was shown in the film festival during the halving. The Bolsa, B is for Bolsa. Yoni was there and Roger, I'm not sure if you saw that movie, but it's actually a movie that's going to be, it's not a society that's yet created in Italy, but they want to create a circular economy and society that already is 5D. That's multidimensional, pure love, consciousness, basically a manifestation of that which we always all want. So, and they want to film a movie based on that. So it's such a beautiful way for our consciousness and our mind to be able to anchor into what would we like to see instead, right? If not this, then can we spend this beautiful, precious energy onto envisioning and activating it with our emotions, the reality that we all want to live in, right? And that might be different for all of us, but what unites us is the love, is the respect, is the thriving on, you know, through the financial system of Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there is, when we bridge those two, the consciousness and the technology of Bitcoin, and holding the space for everyone who's gone through all the trauma, I think energetically all of that starts eventually falling away. You know, when I work with people, I utilize internal family systems. So it's self to parts, self to ego. When the self is met, and I ask them to tap into their own self, right? So self, how do you feel towards this part? And if it's not compassion, it's another ego part. So we either ask the part to step back or we work with that one first, but ultimately we get to the essence, and it's their essence connecting with their ego parts, validating and holding them compassionately, hearing, validating until they are feeling heard and understood, and they themselves want to let go of the suffering, of the pain. And then eventually all there is love. And from there, the ego actually wants to be useful. It wants to help, but it realizes it doesn't have to do it by itself, that it has this resource of consciousness that has all the answers and the embodiment, energetic embodiment of all the solutions that can come with, for the sake of humanity. It's like what Einstein said, you know, you can't solve the same problems from the same level of consciousness that created it. How do we do it? We raise above that ego consciousness without rejecting the ego. It's incorporating and loving all of that is, and then connecting with the ultimate consciousness of our pure essence that we truly are, and always have been, and always will be. So Tom is on.
Beautiful.
Are you able to talk?
Yes, yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Would you like to say hi and contribute whatever is coming to you, whatever you feel like you would like to share?
Sure. My name's Tom Tabor. I'm in Colorado. We have a retreat center on 100 acres here. It's beautiful in the mountains. We hold ceremonies here. We have a small community of friends that live here. We travel to Peru a couple times a year for ayahuasca ceremonies with a family there that we've trusted and do a lot of work with over years. And then last year we held the Bitcoin Bush Bash in America here on the mountains. So we definitely a lot of conferences too, and bring friends, encourage friends. It's a foggy morning here, and our internet goes 14 miles across the canyon over radio frequency.
Wow.
So we have a podcast too. We talk a lot about consciousness. It's called Wide Awake in Babylon, and we talk a lot about these questions of ego, identity, and how that can really mess us up in this world, and how we can actually view the world as almost as like through a screen that's not real. Like we can experience this world as an idea rather than as an experience. And I certainly have done a lot of that in my life and know the pain of that. And how to get out of that is not just a thought, and it can't be a thought. You can't just think your way out of ego, think your way out of all these trappings of it. And what I've discovered for myself, and it's been a hard path because I'm a resistant one. It's through a lot of action, actually changing not just my belief, checking yourself, like believing yourself to be a good person is necessarily a great thing to do to yourself. Like, check yourself, like check your actions, check your behaviors. And when they get out of alignment with what's truly with your souls, then that's really where you have to take notice and be able to fall down. We all have, we all will, and do our best as we move forward. So I try to keep things practical because that's just the way my body and mind wants to work.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Tom. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'd love to add something into what you were saying,
Okay.
Monika. We are all universal consciousness experiencing itself. You know, we're like little God sparks, God fractals. I mean, I'm using God in the kind of universal energetic sense, not in the religious sense. And you know, the whole planet is going through a planetary shift into higher level consciousness, and it can be called a Christed consciousness. Again, not religious. It means, you know, a higher frequency consciousness. But as these little sparks having these experiences, you know, we have contracts, agreements about what we'll be experiencing in this lifetime, and sometimes that includes trauma, includes various things of the universe, of consciousness experiencing itself in these different ways. This whole range of human emotions and experiences. And when we come into these 3D physical bodies, we forget who we are at the spiritual level, at the soul level, when we take on these 3D bodies. And we're in this big, you know, transition phase, you know, cosmically, globally, and personally. So, I mean, and even within that, you know, as we come in, souls can have different timelines, different soul levels, different levels of understanding, infant, adolescent, mature, old. And so when we see all these, to Val, to your question, we see all these things happening, what can we do to help? Sometimes that's exactly where someone needs to be and what they need to be experiencing in the contract in this lifetime. So, you know, from my perspective, it's not about like making the whole earth happy and, you know, and elevated and we're all great, because we actually have some contracts to experience those things as consciousness experiencing itself in the larger cosmic sense. So I'm just kind of watching it all going, great, that's what they need to experience. And as we're in this transition, cosmic global transition, seeing all these things unfold, it's just part of the transition process that we're in. A lot of old patterns that everybody are holding on to with, like, you know, their fingernails, right? And of course, if we're out there to try and make it all better, you know, and if we're focusing on that which you push against increases, of course. And, you know, that Bucky Fuller quote of, you can never change things by fighting the existing reality. We've got to fight. We've got to make it better. We've got to do something about this. It's like, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete, which is, of course, what Bitcoin is. So I watch all these things happening, you know, and I love seeing all the protests and the things that are happening, because it's that energy of people kind of rising up and saying, we don't want that model. We want this. We want something different. But it's all part of this significant major transition that we're in from this very small 3D, 4D understanding of consciousness. So there are kind of layers of understanding going on here, and understanding of how things are unfolding. So it's rare that I kind of look at it and go, we have to do something, we have to fight it, we have to make it better. It's like, let's just let it unfold on its own and have people have these experiences, which they kind of signed up for, you know, at the soul level. And it's all unfolding exactly as it should. I mean, I don't mean it to sound Pollyanna when I say it's all perfect, you know, but at the very larger cosmic sense, it's all perfect. It's unfolding exactly as it wants to and needs to. Not to say we should just sit back and do nothing, to be active, to take action. We're here in these physical bodies to take action in this world. I get that totally. But not to be all kind of wound around you know, something that has to be bad, or, you know, we have to do like slightly different perspective.
I love that. Yes, it's the allowing.
Yeah, and you're totally right there. And I had a teacher who, when I was feeling guilty about my children and the divorce and all this stuff, and he was just like, well, who are you to interfere with someone else's spiritual curriculum? And I'm like, well, I'm their mom. I'm supposed to, you know, be this mom person, and I have a duty. And so I think there's some nuance with the spiritual curriculum that we all come in here with, right? And so there's, you know, we can come in with a perspective of like, if everyone just took care of themselves and we had radical self-responsibility and we all just did, you know, let's work on ourselves, that's great. But then there is also that but how can we use what we're learning? And obviously this is what we do, and share it with others and act as healers and artists and creators and doctors and musicians and activists, podcasters, whatever we are. We're these light workers. And how can we do it in a way that isn't just, okay, we're going to go build our little citadel over here and come on when you guys are ready and screw the rest of you while Rome burns, And so there is that, and I, included Bucky in my presentations for Bitcoin for Peace. And yes, we want to build this whole new thing, but it's also like, okay, how do we love and care compassionately and give tools to other, and it's same thing with the article with the Bitcoiner's Dilemma. Once you become a butterfly, your job isn't to go and land on every caterpillar and say, hey guys, come on, wake up, you're going to turn into a butterfly soon. The butterfly's supposed to go pollinate and go be a butterfly, And so it's like, are we supposed to simply just go do our own dharma and our own work? Or are we as butterflies, obviously, are we supposed to come back and just kind of give a little glimpse to the caterpillars and be like, hey, don't forget, get on that leaf and start doing your thing, and you're going to get some goo and come through. Like, as humans, how do we do both, and not just abandon but not just be stuck in the old.
Totally agree with you. And part of it is like we're little lighthouses, standing there. We're not running around the island. Lighthouses don't run around the island, searching for ships to save, right? They stand there as light, yeah. send out the light, and whoever's supposed to, resonate with that light and tractor beam in on it will find it. So absolutely, I agree with you. And we were here to. This is why I've done trauma work with clients for years. As Monika, it's like I'm not sitting here going, "Oh, you're just having your experience. Have a nice time." We're here to have these experiences too. And allowing people to have their experience sometimes is the best way to support them.
And it's a tough one though, because again, like when you come from a mother consciousness, right? As for me, as a mom, it's very, it's been a challenge. Obviously, anytime my child grows, I have to grow too. And in transitioning from the parent figure and being, I have to mother my children and do this whole, okay, this is how it goes, to more of a coach. Like I have teenagers now, my daughter's going to college, and I have a almost 16-year-old son. I had to transition from that a lot more parenting role to now stepping back and being a coach and being more of a curious questioner versus like, you need to do this and here's your schedule and here's the. And so I wonder, is that like, how can we transfer that, evolution of how we operate with each other, so that we can help the humanity go from preschool to kindergarten to middle school to evolution, I think it's a tough one because there's guilt. I don't know if you guys feel guilty when you see suffering. I think we all probably do. And we all probably feel like I need to do more. I want to help eliminate this suffering. And it's like, do I just
not
eliminate
anymore.
my own, yeah.
Nope.
So sorry.
Nope.
Not anymore. I think, I used to feel guilt, but I at this point, I try to spend as much time in the consciousness that I am, and that allowing the inspiration to come from within, the inspired action, not to come from the ego. I have to help and save, because I realized that I was taking on energies of the clients and rescuing them and getting sick. And that was not, it's not for me to save anyone. It's also patronizing to see others as needing to be saved, but holding that awareness that they are whole. Underneath it all, they are whole. And I think just even the mere frequency of holding that knowing already shifts things for someone else. But I'll hand the mic over to the guys here. I know they're wanting to jump in, so go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, well, once we stop seeing the other as separated, we start to suddenly say, hang on, that's me going through that. And that's what I've been through. And that person needs to go through that too. And that's cool. Like they're on their own journey, and that's their journey for them. That's their learning path for them. And that's a beautiful thing. Why would I impose what I think is something that they need to adjust for themselves when it's really them going through that learning process themselves? And that's it's a beautiful, there was this I forget who was saying it, but if you start to blame someone, you're not seeing things correctly. If you start to blame yourself, you're seeing half of the picture. But when you start to realize there's no blame here at all, then you're accepting the world as it is. And we just have, there's just so much going on in the world that we have zero control over. I mean, that's why I think we gravitate towards Bitcoin, because we know that Bitcoin isn't trying to control anyone. It's opt-in. It's let's do this in the only way we can, which is peaceful, and the only way that really is, I think a growing way for everyone, and a meaningful experience for everyone, because it's the path that they're choosing. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. It's the path that they choose themselves.
Can I jump in?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
So this past week I've been in a very introspective state, because last weekend I did a psychedelic ceremony that was quite life altering for me. And I haven't really broken out of that state yet, but I've been listening to what you all have, what you've been saying, and I just have a few thoughts. I actually have to get going pretty soon, so I thought I'd just share my thoughts before I leave. So to tie back on a few things, one thing that we said about we started talking about the spirituality and as being separate from science, and imbuing spirituality with a lot of woo. And I think when we mystify spirituality, we actually do it a disservice. But I think that the way that I look at it, and you can agree or disagree, is that it's kind of like we are at a stage in our collective spirituality, kind of like we were with cyberspace in the 1800s. We don't have the vocabulary for this field yet, and for this reason, we tend to mystify it more than it needs to be.
Yeah.
We don't understand it well enough to treat it scientifically, so we mystify it. And I think that's doing it a disservice, but we are gradually getting there. Even so, a few of my very specific interests are black holes and quantum mechanics. And now we are at the edge of understanding these phenomena mathematically, where we are at a loss. And I think that it's kind of similar with consciousness and spirituality. We are at a point where we are at the frontier of trying to understand these things. And I think that we should have maybe a spiritual lens on when we look at the mathematics of black holes and quantum mechanics, and we should maybe have a more mathematical and physical lens when we look at spirituality. And I think there's a unification there at the front lines, pioneering new knowledge about these fields. So that's one thing. And also, just to tie back on that thing, who was it, you, Hall, who mentioned that no, Monica, it was you building like a spiritual citadel.
I think DJ Valerie was.
Was that you, Valerie? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was very interesting. I just had a thought about that. So when we have our Bitcoin meetups and we have our conferences, we are basically cosplaying our Bitcoin citadels, and we're doing so very effectively. We're showing that our ideas, our core principles and our money actually works. And it's kind of like Bitcoin really is Burning Man in cyberspace. We organize society around certain principles rather than geographic location and ideologies and politics. But the outside, the society reflects the inside more than the inside reflects the outside, if that makes sense. So at least if we are enlightened, what I mean by that is that, for example, the calm mind is calm in a war zone, but a stressed mind that exists in its pain body can be in the most serene environment and still not be peaceful. So I think that the environment that we create is a reflection of our insights, and reality really is a mirror image of our minds. So I think that trying to construct a society based on these principles, that's a good idea. Like that's what we do with Bitcoin and what we do with Burning Man. But ultimately, I think that what we need to do is basically just get enlightened people together, and from that, we will build a society based on enlightened ideas, because the outside will begin to reflect the inside, because it does so more than the other way around. And one final point I wanted to make, and then I'll give up the mic. We talked about identity and trauma. You had a very good question there, Val. As we all know, ego dissolution often comes before self-alignment. At least it did for me, and I think it does for most people. So you sort of have to separate yourself from your ego before you can start to find the true alignment. And what we have to realize, and this is kind of specifically addressed to you, Caleb, that identity really is an illusion. Yoni Appelberg does not exist. Yoni Appelberg is an idea. It is a construct that I've made to navigate the physical world. But Yoni Appelberg does not exist. I am, as Ram Dass put it, loving awareness. And that is all that I am. I do not exist. And as I said before, also, spirituality is a new and different way to acquire knowledge. And we can perform a simple experiment here, such as going into a psychedelic experience, whether with LSD, psilocybin, or I actually find ketamine to have quite psychedelic properties as well, although it is not pharmacologically a psychedelic. But if you can find yourself in a place where you sort of transport your consciousness to a different place, you can sort of realize that you are a construct. And if you can square that idea, I think that is a good place to start your trauma healing, because if you can completely separate yourself from the construct that you are, the illusion of your identity, then you have broken through all of the layers, all of the defenses. And from there, you can begin to heal. Because if you find the present moment, if you find yourself deeply inside the present moment, that is the only place where you can heal, where you can find joy and happiness. And it's the only place where you can truly honor the human experience from a place of fullness. So when you separate from your ego fully, I think that is probably the best way of beginning to heal, because all the trauma that we have exists in the illusion of our identities.
Beautifully said.
Could I add something to that?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
When I had that experience that happened to me, you're saying when you separate trauma we separate from the ego, it's the best way to heal from trauma. Trauma can take you to that experience. That experience was so traumatic for me, my ego dissolved. There was no sense of human person here, it was just consciousness. And so I've heard this story from so many people who have been through very traumatic experiences where who they thought themselves to be in that trauma experience just dissolved, and they realized they were not that trauma. They were not what that was. So I think it can flip.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes,
Some of us
separating
have
from
to
ego
cry.
can help heal trauma, but trauma can help you separate from ego.
100%. Some of us have to grind in order to find enlightenment. Others have a violent waking up from a car crash or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So it's all happening for us. There's, that contrast is in a way a gift. Whatever we're witnessing in the world, it's if we can make a U-turn and heal whatever parts are getting activated and triggered by the pain and that we're witnessing, and then transform it into pure loving compassion and await the inspired action to evolve from that fullness. It's creating from the egoless state, right? From that pure consciousness that we are. It becomes easier. And then at that point, it becomes, once you awaken and you know that your thoughts create your reality, it's easier to then choose the thoughts. You might not be able to get there when you still identify with the ego and your stories and the pain and the suffering. That takes time, and that will dissolve eventually if you're on that path, I think. But if we can create from that fullness, and I do think vibrationally, a lot of it is already there. Like we are, that dimension of humanity thriving already exists. We're just, if we allow ourselves to step into that frequency, as we embody it with all our cells, our mind, our being in the physical format, we literally transport ourselves there. So if we can help humanity, whoever's ready, whoever's asking for that help, whoever wants that, not everyone is ready. You can't help. You can bring the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And I know that if it wasn't for the experiences I've went through, I would not change anything that I went through, even though it was traumatic and painful and near death and all sorts of things. But I would not be the person I am if it wasn't for that. So in a way, I'm very grateful for the pain. I know you don't have to. You can learn a lot of things from joy and happiness. You don't have to go through pain. But I think souls have to realize that too, that they can learn from happiness as much as they can learn from pain.
Framing your pain as a spiritual teacher is a powerful thing.
Right. And to your point, Monica, about, a lot of folks are on I think of it as those moving walkways in airports, and a lot of them are on, one, and you can step on from 3-dimensional into multi-dimensional into higher consciousness. It's like easy as stepping into a different moving walkway. And some will stay on that 3D walkway for this lifetime. Not everybody's going to transcend into whatever, it may take, quite a while for all of this to really shift. So some people will be on that walkway for quite a long time, but you have the opportunity to step onto another one, and they're parallel. They're happening at the same time. They're both here.
And it's really interesting too that Bitcoin is in alignment in this way, because Bitcoin exists, right? It's here for everyone right now. And yet how many people are actually taking any notice of it? And so in exactly that same way, this parallel consciousness is here. It's just about choosing it. But it's difficult. And Val, I know what you're asking in a way, because it's an emotional response in a way. Well, come on, guys, let's do this for everyone else. But that's I guess that's the irony of it. You can't do it for anyone else, really. You just have to let them. But we can try to be examples, and I think that's what we do with the community of Bitcoin. We try to live an example of some kind.
Yeah, I came up with an interesting model recently that is along the lines of the mycelium of money. And, we envision decentralization is that every single node is exactly the same and has exactly the same amount of power. But in nature, with these biological networks, they have the same underlying protocol, the same underlying language that they speak for the organism to survive. However, there are certain hubs of the mycelium in this case that are more centralized. They're larger. They take in more sunlight. They provide more sustenance to the rest of the organism. And they don't do anything except for live and take in more nutrition and sunlight and more energy, and then distribute that to the rest of the network. If the rest of the network wants to go and form their own hub, they can do that. Or if if they want to branch off and do their own thing, they can do that. But these centralized parts of the mycelium are just there, and they're just living to their fullest extent, and in doing so, in following their truth, in following their truth, they spread that to the rest of the network. So
with integrity and no resistance to what is.
Right.
Guys, I have to get going.
Thank you, Yoni,
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thanks, Yoni.
Yeah, thanks.
We
Ian.
really appreciate you, and thank you for hopping in and your beautiful wisdom. And we'll talk to you soon.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you guys
Yeah.
for being all of who you are. And nice meeting you
Great to
guys.
be with you.
Nice meeting you too.
You too.
Yeah, great to be
You too.
with you.
Thank
See you.
Great. Thank you for the initiative, Monica.
And Caleb, yeah, it's beautiful. So grateful to see you all here. There's more of us. So I think this is something
There's
that
a
we
lot of
can,
us.
Right.
yeah, we can create beautiful things, and gathering all our minds and ideas. We're a powerful force, right? So it's just, I appreciate your presence, and thank you so much.
I'm gonna have some FOMO now that I leave you, but please feel free later, okay?
Yeah,
All right, see you guys.
see you.
Amen.
Beautiful. Yeah, so I think, what comes to mind is, I think every being, as long as they are authentic and aligned with their truth, their highest truth, will be moved to do something different. There will be people who will be taking action, and they're necessary. They're needed because they're called from within. It's powerful, and there's resistance, and there's movements. There's some sort of catalyst for further shifting. There's some of us that are asked to hold the vibration of that frequency that we're already heading, and then when inspired to assist in each. There's no better or worse. I think there's that sort of what feels aligning to all of us, and what feels like a strong yes. I want to be part of this, and I do think that having panels like this, and even on Bitcoin conferences, imagine all of us had this panel where we can all sit and talk about this, and whoever's drawn to it, they can, even people, spiritual aspects of Bitcoin. We have massive so many armies of spiritual beings out there who would benefit, right? We could attract these people in there. They can start looking at things from the technical perspective, and the technical, logical people can look at things from the spiritual perspective, right? And it's just, we're intermingling this wisdom that is within both aspects of the equation, right? They're not separate. They're just different languages, right? That communicate things in the more concrete or a little bit more abstract ways, but they're both equally valid and important, right? That's
so beautiful, Monica.
And creating the connection between, instead of having it be, concrete, physical, scientific, spiritual, creating that connection, because it's just spectrum. It's just a spectrum,
just a
frequency,
spectrum.
density, Yeah.
So true.
I definitely feel it's the future. When I say the future of Bitcoin gatherings, I just feel like for so long it's always been about the tech and the economics and all this stuff, and there's just been very little scope and very little support and funding, particularly for the expressive, the creative, the metaphysical stuff, the spiritual stuff, and we're all here because what is actually what drives us even more than any of the physical stuff. Not that we're unbalanced here, and this is the thing, it has to be balanced. But again, Bitcoiners have their feet on the ground and their head in the clouds, and it needs to be and with the masculine feminine side of things, Bitcoin's always been so masculine as well. And finally, I feel like things are starting to shift in the other way. And it's such an important part of what it is to be human. And Bitcoin is the rehumanization of us in so many ways. And so it has to include all it is to be human. And that's, yeah, just as masculine as it is feminine, just as physical as it is metaphysical. So why wouldn't it be all of these?
It's the yin yang, you know, it's like, it's the same thing, you know, two sides rather than, you know, this and a little bit of that. It's like, it's both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, I was thinking there's something to that also, where the future that Bitcoin helps create, we're not ready for yet. Like, we're not mentally, emotionally, spiritually ready for it yet. We're trapped in a slave world in many ways of this crazy ass fiat clown place that we live. And we don't know what it would be like to live without all that madness, to actually have freedom of time and space to do as we please. And I don't think a lot of people can handle that right now either. Like that is terrifying. And it's with it comes all that responsibility that Bitcoin asks of us as well, and life and spirit and everything. Like, the path of healing is actually just the path of maturity. It's the path of taking on greater responsibility, which is being able to respond to what life is handing you, to the present moment, actually, not to the past or the future. And so this seed that we're planting here is the seed to help make that bridge to a world where you don't have to work 3 to 4 jobs and you don't see your kids, or you just all the troubles that people have in this world. How can we bridge to something better? And practically, this is the thing I most love about Bitcoin, is the practicality of it. It's not this woo-woo idea of, hey, we're all going to be butterflies flying together and whatever, and you know, all this peace. No, it's practical, on the ground. How do we get from this crazy world we're in to a better world, and hopefully see some part of it before we pass, and hopefully pass on as much as we can to our children and to the next generations as possible. So yeah, that's part of my fire in this, is how do we help prepare ourselves and others, and whatever this transition is to a more Bitcoin world, as least violently as possible, and I don't know, just not as destructive as it has, as revolutions have been in the past. So,
and to your point, Tom.
Go ahead.
To your point, Tom, of you know, the whole idea of, and Breedlove talks about this, Saylor talks about this, you know, money is time encapsulated, right? And Bitcoin gives time back in a way that we have never experienced. And, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, if I had, you know, absolute, like, you know, disposable income, if I had disposable time, you know, to do whatever I wanted, what would that look like? And, that, you know, most of us have never had that opportunity to even think about it. You know, to me, when I realized that Bitcoin was going to be like the third piece that fell in place of, you know, I had technological and, you know, economic, and then there was kind of a spiritual part. It's like, it's supporting this whole revolution. And I don't mean revolution violent, but, you know, shifting consciousness towards another renaissance. Like, if everyone had time, you know, through having money, real money, what does that change in your life? Time with your children, time to be creative, time to, and, you know, that's the whole, you know, 16th century, 15th, 16th century Renaissance that happened was, you know, there was so much creativity that happened because there was support, because there were patrons, you know, not that model, but that sense of, if you have that, what does that mean in your life? What does, you know, being able to be creative in your life mean, Val, to all the things that you're putting together? Yeah. So that sense of money is time, and Bitcoin gives us that time back. How does that change humanity? It's just, it's so big, I can't even wrap my arms around it, what that would mean. we're nowhere near anywhere near that, but just the potential of that. That's one of the things that's pulling me forward, that keeps me involved in, Monica, to your point about, or Tom, your point about taking action in this world, is promoting this and having people know about it and having more people have it. So they have that financial freedom, which gives them time freedom, which gives them creative expression, and opening up those doors.
Yeah. And everything once was an idea, I remember walking through Manhattan and looking at the skyscrapers and saying that once was an idea that was not thinkable and possible in most of the humans' minds. And yet here it is, totally normal, and everyone is embracing it. And so I think the idea and envisioning, like, maybe there could be more time spent in envisioning what that world would look like. Right? What would we do with all this time? And just playing around with that, knowing, and then figuring it out from the logical, practical sense. How can we develop these technologies even further to get us there? Right? The practical application, what Tom was saying, just the boots on the ground that Roger refers to, it's the idea creates that sort of, idea coming from that pure wholeness of consciousness, then utilizing the brain, the mind. We have this amazing computer that can then logically start implementing tangible tools to ground it in the here and now, in the physical form. But, instead of creating as a reactionary outside, inside, outside, but utilizing both forces of the logic and the consciousness, merging those two to create solutions that are beyond what we ever imagined before. And that's what Bitcoin is for all of us. I think it really was created by both an enlightened being and a genius, and a logical genius, someone who was able to merge those two so ideally and ground it in a physical format with math, with technical applications, for the benefit of all, right? Because also with the awareness that we are all interconnected, right? There's no cells in the conscious body, that if we all thrive, we all stop creating that cancerous soil that kills us all.
I love this. It's so cool. What do you guys think about, because when you're just saying envisioning, and that's like my favorite thing to do on Earth, is just envision the new world and envision things. Like, what if we did like maybe we can do a series? It doesn't have to, because I think it's a lot to unpack in one, a couple hour experience. But what if we put together something where we've invited folks who aren't Bitcoiners, but who have been building like intentional communities and who've been building their own microcircular little off-grid things that maybe aren't Bitcoiners yet, but have some lessons to teach us, and then obviously we could share best practices of, this is how Bitcoin could work for circular economies. I got to meet Charles Eisenstein in Costa Rica, and there's a lot of again, the old naive.
Val, is he the guy who wrote the Sacred
Economics?
Economics, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so there's still, even though these folks have great ideas or great philosophers and whatnot, they're not understanding the truth of what Bitcoin can offer, and they're misguided and they're so guided in the right direction towards love and towards a better world for all. And so I think we have a lot of really cool opportunities to have conversations, and really open each other's eyes to like, oh wow, I didn't know this over here, and oh cool. And how can, not just philosophically, let's talk about stuff, but like what's working, what's not, what's working in our Bitcoin circular economies, and what's missing, what can we. And there's no cookie cutter anything on planet Earth, right? Obviously, we have little blueprints that we can play with, but then they're all going to get adapted, to everybody's unique things. But I think, that sharing of information with the intention of love, with the intention of growing this ourselves and our world in a more peaceful, harmonious direction. I think it would be really neat to have some more of these opportunities to come together as panels, as groups, as retreats, as accelerators, as whatever it is we're doing, I think we're bridge builders, you know, and I would love to explore that a little bit more. I started a project called the 1111 Peace Park Project a while back, and it's sitting on a shelf, and it would be interesting to talk about that too. I'm not going to go into it right now, but
that would be so lovely to share. It's amazing. It's really remarkable. Love that. Love all of it. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, but maybe we could do something like this together and like invite some more folks, you know, from the consciousness world, from the Bitcoin and peace and all the good stuff. So maybe, I don't know, that would be fun to do together.
Would be amazing. What do you think, Caleb?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the kind of one of the main themes that, you know, really started this conversation, and Valerie has been bringing it up a lot, is, you know, what do we do? Because we have this feeling in our heart that we want to share this amazing information, because we see people suffering, we see people fighting back with their rationality and resisting some of these ideas and concepts, and we feel like we need to do something to help stop people suffering, and ultimately I think what we can do is just do what excites us, and in doing so, and this is really what kind of made me a Bitcoiner, was hearing other Bitcoiners and hearing their passion and hearing their truth, because when I feel that from other people, that's what actually convinces me. You know, I can have somebody talk to me all day about I don't know, fashion or something, and I won't connect with it, because I know I don't feel that genuine the resonating genuine passion and curiosity within myself that's on the same level as that other person. But when we genuinely you know, share our desires and just get together like this, the way that it resonates with people, that's really what changes hearts, I think. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think the storytelling part is super important, Caleb. And I think, you know, hearing stories from people that you speak their language, you know, again, whether it's fashion or race car driving or whatever it might be, is ultra important that, you know, we keep sharing stories. Bitcoin for Peace is starting a project, the Peaceful Money, Peaceful World series, kind of like Chicken Soup for the Soul. And so I haven't started pushing it out there yet, because we're still working on the Creator Summit, which of course I want to invite you to, Caleb. And we'll talk about that later. But, you know, Chicken Soup for the Soul was very powerful because of the before and after stories of people going through a difficult time and then sharing their stories. And it you know, I used to live in Hawaii, and we talk about, you know, we would say talk story, and that's like sharing wisdom and sharing stories with each other. And so that's why Chicken Soup for the Soul was so wildly popular, is because it was just us normal plebs talking about some horrible thing that happened in life and how we overcame it, or maybe not something horrible, but, you know, and then they started segmenting it into, you know, Chicken Soup for the teen soul, Chicken Soup for the executive soul, da da da. And the power of feeling like you're not alone on your journey is so important. And when you're in the middle of a transformational, whether it's a crisis or a non-crisis, a lot of times you think you're the only person on earth who's ever gone through this thing. And it's very lonely. And especially if you're a powerful human being and you're an executive, or you're a mom, or you're a sports person, or whoever you might be, and your ego identifies as you being powerful. And then all of a sudden you're going through a weakness, a transformational point where you have to let the old shell go and be naked for a little while before you jump into the new shell, like a hermit crab does. It's lonely. You feel like, nothing, no one else can relate to me. And so when we can share these stories, you know, of empowerment and transformation, it gives us that permission slip to like be vulnerable, and it gives us that permission slip to be authentic and say like, I don't have it together. And so as Bitcoiners, I think sharing our before and after stories, you know, whether it's through an article, a poem, a song, a little video, whatever, and showing like how I was before. Like I've heard a lot of people getting through addictions because of Bitcoin. because Bitcoin gave them hope. It was something tangible for them to look forward to and realize, like, wow, I don't have to live in this old coping mechanism vibration. I can live in this hopeful, peaceful, tangible future vibration. And so I think having opportunities to share stories, and people, it's healing to share stories. It's healing to be seen. It's healing for our souls to be exposed and be witnessed with love and non-judgment. And so I think for all of us to support each other and lifting each other up through storytelling, through sharing these little nuggets, is also going to lead to these little micro transformations and these micro permission slips, for all of us to realize, like, wow, I'm not alone. And there's all these other folks over here, and I can relate to them because they've done something similar. So I think we can look forward to some of that in the future and sharing together, these stories and uplifting each other. So I'm excited to create
for sure
that and with you all, because I want all of your stories too.
I know. I'm so excited. I want all of us and more of us to be part of this experience, and whoever wants to join, and how we can mutually benefit each other and help each other rise even more as we hold the space for everyone else who's coming, because there'll be many more, many more people who are going to turn into Bitcoiners as everything collapses around us. So I think our role as beings who still have an ego, but have that awakened awareness, we do have a responsibility in a way of holding that space and helping people see a path of hope and transformation. So I feel like this was, this awareness of consciousness and the practical applications, marrying those two and bringing them together, will benefit the future, what's to come, which is inevitable. Because obviously the systems have been completely broken, and it's just coming to the foreground, coming out of the shadows to be seen, to be witnessed. That's why it seems very scary and bad, but it's all being integrated. I do foresee a lot of need for the work that we all do in our own individual ways, and people who are attracted to our specific vibration will come our way. So there's really no competition. There's only collaboration and support, and elevating and talking about it together and separately, with each of different points of views are so complementary, right? Because we're seeing things from a more holistic perspective. There's nothing wrong with any different perspectives. It's all welcomed and valued.
And that's to the beauty of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin brings out this authenticity in you. And because we are all different, we're seeing these different things pop up at Bitcoin conferences. You've got all kinds of expression of Bitcoin. And, I mean, that's what brought me to chocolate or to the cacao thing, for example. It happened really naturally through Bitcoin. And in a way, I mean, music was that sort of way of being a little, like a kind of a sly roundabout way to express Bitcoin in a way that wasn't technical, that wasn't financial. And I think, and when I've done a couple of cacao ceremonies with normies, and I've introduced Bitcoin, and they're completely open to it. It's this weird, I think as Bitcoiners, we just want to tell people about the money. But actually, I think there's, like we've all been saying, there's so many ways to reach a higher level of consciousness and reach Bitcoin. And in a way, it really doesn't have to be through technical or this sort of financial approach. And I think when you realize what it is authentically that you're searching for in bringing out into the world, then you will start to resonate with other people, because you're doing it from a place of authenticity. And then people start going, hey, wow, I resonate with this guy. what's going on here? Is he actually saying something that maybe has a bit of substance to it? Maybe this Bitcoin thing isn't so weird after all, you know?
Well, it's like this is so true, Roger, like what you said, Holly, about being the lighthouse, and I think for all of us, when we're our own unencumbered lighthouse, then we're going to attract the right aligned boats as you who get that, and so for all of us to just be comfortable removing the veils and the things that cover up our light is very important, and to have that the confidence to do that, and I think for all of us, when we it obviously has to come from within, but when we get that reinforcement from each other, because it's like, oh, look, she's being brave without her mask or her thing, and I guess maybe I'll try that too. Ooh, that was kind of cool. Look, I have a new friend who, so I think it's so important that we keep connected on this, and not try to go be, I'm not trying to go be XYZ DJ or XYZ podcaster. I'm just looking for my own uniqueness to come out right as me. And if we can all do that, wow, what a gift. And I always think, I always talk about comparisonitis, and what a huge disease that is for most of us humans. And it's a survival instinct disease, right? And so a dis-ease, because we look at others and we're like, whoa, I'm supposed to be doing this thing and living this way and la, la, la. And then, to truly be ourselves is the strongest, most brave thing we can do. And I love nature analogies, of course. And I think about flowers in a flower garden, right? Like a rose its only job is to go be a rose. It's not looking around and going, oh my God, that sunflower over there is a little taller. Like maybe I'm supposed to be like her, or, oh, I'm supposed to be like grass, the little flocks on the ground. I'm supposed to be lower. A rose is a rose and a rose. It just does rose, and it's not trying, and so if we as individuals can identify as our own unique one flower in the garden, wow, that's so cool. And then we can admire the beauty of the other flowers versus trying to think we have to be like them, and I think that's one of the a spiritual lesson that I think we all get to share. And it's that, just our authentic nature. And what is that?
Right.
To
Right.
me,
Or want them to be like us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so
That's
funny
so
how we
true.
can be universal consciousness and be all one and be absolutely, unique individual
Yeah.
fractals of that,
Right?
in our individuality, which, and to celebrate that, to your
Yeah.
point, Val.
It's like decentralized, centralized, like pure consciousness, decentralized, in our unique ways, and
Yep.
honoring all of that, not fighting it, not trying to oppose. Yeah, that's the only
Well, and
way.
it's like you think about like water. I always think about our souls, our consciousness, whatever we want to label all of this as. It's like the ocean is the whole, right? And you were mentioning fractals a lot, Holly. And I think about, when there's heat applied to this water, it causes it to evaporate and separate and then into these unique little drops for their own little momentary experience of being an individual drop. And then it goes back into the whole, mixes it all up. Something happens with this heat thing, and rinse and repeat to infinity. And I wonder, is that us? Are we doing that? Are we these drops that are the whole? And, we can come up with all of our analogies, but it's like, once you realize your temporary illusion of separation is temporary and it's an illusion, you can have more fun with it, and enjoy it a little bit more and not feel this like, I'm going to be separate forever, or I'm the only one, it's like,
Or survival of the fittest, right? Like I have to be the one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're all drops in the ocean. Sometimes we come out like little drops and we're in that, some little separate thing, and then poof, back in the ocean.
Yeah. And rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. It's like,
yeah. And you
it's
can
so
talk about
beautiful.
like these human incarnations are the little drops, and we drop back into
Right.
soul level in the ocean again,
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting. And I know it's so difficult sometimes for us when we're in a chemical state and an energetic state of fear. And if we're in an energetic state of separation and lack, you know, because of all the things we're in these human suits, right? That's all they are. They're suits, and they're little skin suits, like Ram Dass says. And they do have an operating system that is primal, that is animalistic, you know? And so it's difficult sometimes if you're in this suit and it's got this whole thing going on and you're trying to be a lighthouse, but it's telling you that you need to go back into your reptile and get afraid and get defensive and think that the lion's coming to get you, sort of thing. And so how can we continue to know that we're up here, and it's that zooming out, it's conscious zooming out of what is true, you know?
Yeah, Val, you know, it's interesting. Every contraction, I've noticed the moment I over-identify with the ego and go into the fear state, and I do so, lots of things can be triggering. But after, when not avoided and really met and honored and transformed, it creates a bigger expansion. It's like really amazing how that contraction is actually for us, right? So we don't have to be afraid of that. We don't have to just be pure consciousness. We're also ego, and it's okay to be human, and it's okay to have these moments. It's okay not to have things together all the time. And, you know, just to be ourselves and just see, honor all of it, and really welcome it with love. Right? So, yeah.
And Monica, to your point about stepping into it rather than pulling back and being, you know, step into it, you know?
Yeah.
All of it is for us.
All of it is for us. Exactly.
It is for us. Well, it's intimidating though, because when a lot of us, you know, in this, you know, prior to me having a massive, colossal gift of a breakdown 8 years ago, 2016, 8 years ago, I used to have this conversation in my head because I had a girlfriend who went through depression, and I was always just like, oh, get out of it. Just snap out of it. What are you doing? Just go out and get some sunshine. And I didn't have compassion for her experience because I thought that it was so easy to turn it on and off, you know, and turn on, you know, just being, you know, joyful or in a state of peace, you know, and it wasn't until I had to go through my giant, you know, colossal breakdown to have that compassion to understand, you know, that, oh, wow, all of us organisms have a breaking point. We all have a snapping point. And if we don't have that awareness and the self-care and the respect, it's difficult, you know. When I was doing the Ibogaine journey, one of the other experiences I had was flying through the universe, you know, and I'm flying all over the place, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I'm seeing all the galaxies and systems and all this crazy shit. And I was like, whoa. And all of a sudden I heard this voice behind me, and it was a female voice, a feminine voice. She's like, it's pretty fucking cool, huh? And I was like, yeah, that's great. And we're cruising around still. And I was just like, and we paused and we're looking at it all. She's like, nice work, huh? And I'm like, are you God? And she was like, are you? And and I'm like, okay, I don't know. And I was like, all right, let's check this out. And I go, so if you can do all of this, God consciousness, why is there so much suffering on planet Earth? Like, why would you create this thing and have so much suffering? Why are these kids, you know, dying and all the things? And she was just like, well, Earth is a place to learn compassion. Like, your job as humans is to go through compassion school, basically, and start to understand that you are all one, you know? And so until all of the consciousness and the humans can open their hearts more to that unity, you're still going to continue to see all of the suffering, and you're not going to get to that place of peace. And it was such a wake up for me, you know, because I don't know. Can you guys relate to that at all? Like, thinking about like this, how do we embrace compassion and love of self and other? And yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah, and it's definitely compassion and not empathy, because when we're in empathy, we over-identify with the suffering, right? So we had this practice when we were training during the internal family systems modality. We would practice on each other, one being a compassionate therapist versus an empathic therapist. And with empathic therapist, I would not feel safe, or like people who are too much in empathy, over-identifying with the pain, because I was worried about them being crushed, versus compassion that holds it all, right? And in a way is not identifying, but also has a lot of holding and loving space, spacious, being that spacious awareness, being that compassionate love, pure love consciousness with whatever is showing up is actually transformative, because that pain very quickly gets transformed. It dissipates when you can be knowing that you are here with your, like, I'll give you an example. For example, I was flying, I forgot where we were going. We were on the plane and with Avi, my husband, and the plane dropped very drastically, and I could feel my parts, ego parts, like, oh my God, our son is away, and you know what's going to happen, and people just reacted very drastically, and I could feel my heart race. And then I said, okay, who am I? I'm the pure awareness, right? But I'm not going to bend in my parts, my ego. I'm going to be there and validate. I hear you, I see you, I understand you're worried. Let's just, be with this fear and breathe through it. It was like sort of like a coaching. I was coaching my ego to calm down. And eventually it got to the part, it's like, remember, you are creators. What would you like instead? And I hear my ego parts like a little people inside. I know it sounds kind of out there, but we do have like little parts of us, like little kids and, the older versions of ourselves. And they all came up with this idea where just imagine there's these angels that are holding up the plane, and that somehow amnesia covers the plane and no one's really focusing on the fear. And we are having a safe landing and all works out well. That instance, literally exactly, it felt like angels lifted up the plane and everything leveled and people laughed and we landed very happily. So it was almost like the dual awareness of being with the human and being the consciousness and honoring both, right? So just compassion, but not identification. Because if I was completely identified with the pain, with that totally in empathy of the pain, I would be the pain. And there's really no solution when you're in that depths of like suffering. But if you can be with the pain and then speak for the parts, not from them, it becomes a little bit more
Yes.
solution forming, that actually like sustainable solutions applied. Yeah.
Holding that higher awareness and still being with, your three-dimensional self.
Yeah.
Having that higher awareness and being able to hold both, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I guess we have such heavy fiat bags, like baggage, sorry, I should say fiat bags, but we have this history.
I wish.
Yeah, we have this history of, the scientific revolution, right? Like, I mean, the material, measurable, empirical world has been a part of how we perceive for centuries now. And so we're fixed, like Holly's been saying, we're fixed in this 3D world, and it's a very measurable, scary, as Val was saying, it's a very comparative kind of world. And to learn to let go is what this is all about. It's about being able to say it's okay. It's being able to say, I am love. I'm not fear anymore. I just want to be here for all of the beauty. I love this saying, actually. It's an Indian saying. There's, when you reach a place, you see that the path is what's in front of you, but then the path is behind you, the path is to the left of you, the path is to the right of you, the path is below you, the path is above you, the path is in front of you, and you're on the path. And no matter which way things are going, and no matter how crazy and distorted the world is, it's somehow it's okay. And I don't know, it's not easy, and it's always going to be a struggle, and there's no real end to this struggle. And that's the game that we're all playing. We all need to stay in the game and know that we're not really ever going to finish the game, but that it's okay. And as long as you just keep playing, it's okay.
And celebrate the journey as we unfold. Well, until we die fully as physical beings and turn into pure bliss consciousness.
And then
Until
it all happens again, right? Like, I mean, I think,
yeah,
I don't think
Rinse and
it really-
repeat, you know?
Yeah, rinse and repeat. Yeah.
but isn't that what Bitcoin is in a way, like the infinite, or the infinite merge into finite? That's the scar that we are
That's
the
right.
infinite in the physical body, that creates that abundance. Like it's through us things are happening. It's through that limitation that maybe a lot of people in spiritual community, I know I did consider that a limitation, but now it's like, no, this is what abundance means. This is what the expression, because we can come up with so many different variations of expressions, creative expressions of solutions, and play with in this big playground of life together and have an amazing time connecting to each other just like we did today. It's just such a gift.
Such a gift.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to hop off, but
I
it's
know.
been so
We've been on for a long
wonderful
time.
being with you all. It's just been an absolute treasure.
Likewise.
So
Thank you so much.
really,
So good to see you all.
thank you. Thank you all
It's
so
been
much. Look forward to
beautiful.
connecting again in
Thank you
whatever
very
medium,
much.
you know, whatever medium we have and do and are and want to.
Likewise.
I
I think
love this, you guys.
yeah, we're gonna wrap this up because it's been over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right,
Totally.
Caleb?
Yeah, this is great.
And-
Yeah. Thank you all so much.